So let's switch gears now and talk about the World Bank's 2024 annual meeting. And this time, the theme is agriculture for growth. Now, agriculture, often described as the backbone of many economies, is receiving a renewed focus on the global stage. At the ongoing IMF and World Bank annual meetings in Washington, the World Bank President Ajay Banga announced plans to double its agricultural financing to $9 billion annually by 2030. The goal, to address critical challenges in food production, boost food security, and advance climate-smart agriculture.
Meanwhile, the African Development Bank has called for bold and innovative approaches to tackle poverty, spotlighting Africa's need for strong, coordinated action in the face of global challenges like climate change and food insecurity. Today, we're joined by Samuel Fadunsin, the Commercial and Export Manager at ThriveAgric, a company deeply invested in Africa's agricultural sector. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Well, first, could you share your perspective on the World Bank's commitment to boost agricultural financing? How significant is this move, especially for African countries like Nigeria, that is relying heavily on agriculture, especially given our food insecurity challenges?
All right. Thank you. I think it's an excellent move in the right direction. The conversation about agriculture, spiraling economies, improving quality of lives, creating opportunities has been on for a long time. And, it's been like, a very long conversation with minimal action. There have been actions, right? But they have not been able to equate the amount of conversations that we've had. Right. So, from my perspective, I think it's an excellent move in the right direction, because now there is a major focus on the challenges that agriculture faces in Nigeria and even in the African milieu on a broad level. Right. So, yeah, the World Bank has been able to identify, 4 key challenges, and they are providing solutions to them. This cuts across, climate challenges, access to farmers, credit risks, that prevents financial institutions and major key players from getting access to farmers,
right?
To playing their major role that they can't play, right? And then, of course, a unified front for private investments into agriculture, right? So, right. I think it's a move in the right direction. Now we're going to enjoy more focus on agriculture.
Now, with the $9 billion that's now been earmarked for agriculture, do you think that this would increase? Do you think this increased financing could transform agribusiness development on the continent?
Definitely would, right? Oh. I think the current funding for agriculture globally is below about $3 billion, right? And if it's tripling to as much as $9 billion in by 2030, I think it's going to positively affect agriculture, the productivity, right? And that's because that's more funding for infrastructures. One of the major challenges that we face in agriculture in Nigeria is infrastructure. You have situations where people are experiencing logistic problems, people are having storage issues. And this funding, it opens more doors, right? Improving the infrastructure, improving storage system, and improving research. This can be directed into research for us to develop new agricultural technologies, new agricultural practices that are sustainable and, of course, efficient.
Let's focus on Nigeria.
Okay.
Is funding our biggest problem?
Yes, in a way. Right, funding is part of our biggest problems. There is a lot of business that can be done in Nigeria, especially in the agricultural sector, right? But funding is a major challenge, not because there is not enough funds, but there are so many risks that surround the funding, such that investors or players, private sector key players that can invest into agriculture are scared for so many reasons, so many valid reasons, right? And for the focus that has been directed, the additional focus that has been directed towards agriculture this year, I think we can now look at measures that can de-risk the challenges around funding.
Well, no, what challenges or what scares these investors the most?
All right, so a lot of it is debt management, right? the farmers are the engineers of agriculture in Nigeria, the grassroots farmers now, right? And, you need to pass down education to them, a lot of education. Now, this is not to say that they do not already have the knowledge of farming, right? But, the adequate information, the adequate education, the adequate training, the support that they need to upscale their farming from subsistence farming to commercial farming. There are a lot of grassroots farmers with the capabilities of, making major changes in the agricultural sector through their knowledge, through their expertise, through their experience over the years, but they lack the support, right? Now, for the support and the entire requirement that they need, it requires a lot of funding, right? And debt management, these are people that you do not have enough information on their capabilities and what they can do, right? So you need to train them, you need to fund them in order to increase their productivity, right? So debt management it's a major problem for investors.
I'm surprised you didn't mention insecurity.
Yes, I was going to get to that. Right?
So
I was going to get to that. Right? Insecurity is a problem because do you want to fund somebody's farm and then it's swept away by flood? Do you want to fund somebody's farm and then there are security situations in their localities that affect their farmlands and even their people? Do you understand? If we're going to talk about their farmlands, we can also talk about the machinery, the workforce that drives the thriving of these farming procedures, these operations, right? So, those are like, we can highlight those as major challenges that investors face in terms of their willingness to fund agriculture in Nigeria.
So what are some methods that have not been tried yet in tackling these challenges, just besides debt servicing and, and lack of funding, but most importantly, insecurity?
All right. So, there are various measures that have been tried but need to be improved, right? But if I would highlight a particular measure that I don't think has been tried as much as it should have been, it's the integration of insurance products, right? Integrating insurance products that covers the farmers, that covers the investors at large, right? What is the hope of, I highlighted the situation, what's the hope of a farmer that has his farmland swept away by flood? How can you help them rebuild, right? So if there are insurance products that gives hope to the farmers, to the grassroots farmers, if there are insurance products that enhances even the investors to think that even if this farmer that I'm funding encounters a problem, there is hope, there is support, there is enough material, there is enough resources to help them start all over again. I believe that, and that's just one of the solutions that I think we need to try. I also think we need to pay attention to fintech solutions for agriculture. If I go a little bit practical, sometime last December, I was in a faraway village in Ondo State. And this is one that I would describe to my family and friends as being out of civilization, right? And, I went there with the purpose of buying commodities at farm gate, right? And there was one major requirement, which was a setback for me. And it was that I had to pay in cash, right? And, I'm buying commodities worth millions of naira, and you want me to walk into that village with tons of cash. It was a problem for me, which means in that situation, that's a challenge even for the farmers. They have limited access to capital if they are waiting for people to bring cash to them, right? So if we can implement better fintech solutions where at the point of negotiation, I can facilitate payment to my farmer. At the point of negotiation, they can get useful capital to keep the cycle running. We need to ensure that in these places, in these localities that matter, we improve availability of financial technology, we improve availability of network connectivity. Because, there were experiences of me holding my phone in one position, in one location, just to make calls. And if I lose that spot, I start to look for another spot where I can get network. And so these are challenges, right? But, if I'm going to pay attention to that, I would say we should look at, more better fintech solutions to.
So there's obviously, a lack of financial infrastructure, that you probably would have helped the farmers better. Hardware as well. We've been talking about mechanized agriculture for decades. We've not really, made significant headway in that regard. There is the Bank of Agriculture. There's the Nigerian Ministry as well. Then, of course, now we're talking about the AFDB. What are targets that you believe that the Nigerian government should set for itself with regards to agriculture, and how achievable are these targets by 2027, for example?
I really cannot categorically dictate targets that the Nigerian government can set for themselves. I mean, in an isolated state, right? I think that if we're going to pay attention to it, it's just for governments, not just Nigeria, even African countries that are affected by these challenges, to pay attention to the work that the World Bank is doing. Right? They have a laid out strategy that tackles a lot of these challenges head on. It's just to get on board. And they can now set realistic targets in line with what the international community is starting to do, right? And we can then also align ourselves with their goals, and attack it locally, attack it organically, right? And the Nigerian government is here with us. They are more aware of these problems. They experience these problems with us more than the international community, right? And so I would believe that it's just I think there has been a little bit of a lag with the Nigerian government catching up with strategies, catching up with implementations that are being developed by international communities.
Yeah, because the international community, whatever specific problems that the Nigerian agricultural sector has, are specific to Nigeria mostly. I mean, if we're going to look at data-driven solutions to what exactly the Nigerian farmer is dealing with, the farmer in Mali might have a different problem.
Yeah, I mean, the problems are often universal. I mean, you can have vary in terms of level and degree depending on peculiarities basically. But I mean, the problems are universal. We have security problems in most places.
Are farmers getting attacked in South Africa?
Maybe not as much as Nigeria.
Yeah, but
maybe not as much as Nigeria.
One of the key takeaway from your submissions have been, the fact that public-private partnership and the introduction of private sectors in working with the government is quite key to provide a holistic, solution to the food insecurity that we see, right? Okay. But one of the challenges and the priorities that was mentioned during the World Bank meeting was the de-risking agriculture. De-risking agriculture was a priority. Okay. And so I have to say, what does de-risking look like, and in practice, and how does it impact the confidence of private investors, in this case, in agriculture?
Okay, I already touched on that a little bit in some of the comments I made earlier. For the private community, for the private investors, right? We particularly need to make them feel safe when they think about investing in agriculture, when they think about the value that they bring, when they think about the potential that agriculture has for the larger world, and they want to invest in. We particularly need them to feel safe, right? So we need to have more collaborations between private sector organizations, a lot of them. I think, the private sector is one of the major drivers, in fact, if not the major driver of agriculture in Nigeria. A lot of the foods a lot of crops that are grown are being processed by private sector organizations, right? So, and a lot of them operate in isolation, right? So, one of the ways we can have these risks managed is for more collaboration between private sector stakeholders, where they can collectively impact the life of farmers, right? And if we're also talking about de-risking agriculture as a whole, we also need to imbibe that collaboration. We also need to imbibe that collaboration in grassroots, in smallholder farmers too, right? The risk is high when you're dealing with one smallholder farmer. If he encounters a problem, he has to bear that risk all by himself. He has to bear the problem all by himself. But in a situation where they exist in a community of farmers, right? And I know that organizations are already doing this, right? But we need to expand on it, right? For example, if you have a group of 10 farmers, if one of these farmers encounters a problem, it's the burden of all the 10 farmers. They have to come together to support each other and ensure that the group excels in whatever they are trying to do. And now, this is a smaller community that is bigger, that is part of it's like an onion. There are smaller communities embedded in bigger communities, and there it grows like that. So it's always, it's at the very least of possibilities that these problems will transcend from the lower groups to the higher groups. there's a lot of support in collaboration that helps farmers to curtail situations before it becomes
just briefly
escalated.
Tell us a little bit about ThriveAgric.
All right, ThriveAgric is an agri-tech company that leverages technological solutions, to provide solutions to agriculture, to improve the lives of smallholder farmers generally. And currently we are working with about 800,000 farmers, and it's the major goal is to help them transition from their subsistence farming to commercial farming. And
So in your interaction with farmers, what is their biggest challenge?
Their biggest challenge is financing. Now, when I'm talking financing, I do not necessarily mean funds.
Okay.
Right. Sometimes these farmers do not have access to inputs. And when I mean inputs, I mean the seeds, the actual seeds that they should plant. Right. Some of them do not have access to materials that can help their farmlands better. They don't have access to a lot of this. In fact, even the education. Right. Part of what we discussed at the annual meeting was how to start farming smartly, especially or surviving climate situations, climate smart agriculture. Right. And there are a lot of these farmers that I'm not going to say they are ignorant or they do not know about these things, but they do not have a way of providing solutions to the challenges that they have. Especially when we're highlighting climate situations. There are farmers that can tell you when the rain will stop just by looking at the insects in the soil. They will tell you these insects cannot come out unless the rains have completely stopped, right? But in situations when the rain continues to fall and it may affect their yield, they do not have solutions. This is where ThriveAgric comes in. We're able to provide solutions. We're able to provide inputs. We're able to provide financing. We're able to provide education for our farmers to ensure that they're able to scale up from their subsistence farming, make more money for themselves, improve the quality of their lives. We're able to create an ecosystem where they're able to exist healthily and impact the coming generation.
In trying to provide assistance to the subsistence farmers, what is the biggest challenges that you have yet found solution in helping them to succeed?
For ThriveAgric, because we majorly operate in the north, I think one of the biggest challenges is identifying farmers, right? And if I would highlight it this way, there is a major challenge, especially for names, right? For farmers in the north, you would have 10, 20 farmers are bearing the same name.
Identification is an issue.
Identification.
And they don't have the NIN. They don't have the.
They have the NIN. It might be a challenge accessing this information because it's their private information and they have to give consent, right? So if we're able to, maximize opportunities of getting or even, integrating better ways to identify farmers, right? Basically that, and then, I would have pointed out debt repayment as a major challenge for farmers, but over the years, we've been able to, implement measures, we've been able to mitigate risk around debt management. We have a very high level of debt repayment from our farmers, and so
But we're running out of time, but I once again want to get some clarity on where we possibly can be, and that's the reason I asked the question initially. What is the target that we can set for ourselves? If we say funding is the problem, the World Bank now has increased its, is planning to increase its budget. $9 billion, quite a lot. There has always been the Bank of Agriculture that has provided some level of support. Policy support units come from the Nigerian government. But if you've had your own assessment, is there targets that you should be able to, if you were handling the Ministry of Agriculture, for example, in Nigeria, what targets would you want that we at least meet up with so that by 2027 we can say, okay, this is where we are. We've now been able to, create the possibility of increasing our exports. We've been able to arm more farmers with funding. We've been able to increase, the level of, of fintech or, some level of technology into farming. Something. Set a target, that you think is achievable for the current administration. Because it can't just be money.
Yeah, I understand. If I would set a target, I would say, by 2027, with the focus that is currently placed on agriculture, I think we should be able to increase food production and food security by at least 50 to 60% by 2027.
Okay.
I think that's an achievable target. If these policies, I don't expect them to fail, right? But with the optimism that things go very well, I expect that food production and food security by 2027 should increase by 60%. I also expect
60 is a large percentile.
Yes, I know. And there's a lot of work going on. There is a lot of work going on across the private sector. I would like to believe that there's a lot of work going on across, even in the public sector too. From governments in African countries, in Nigeria, right? So, with the World Bank placing a lot of focus on it, I think it can increase the collaboration between public and private sectors, to implement these strategies, right? So, I know it's a lot, but I think it's achievable. I think it's a smart goal for us to set as an administration to be achieved by 2027.
Lastly, before, because I have to ask you about, Dr. Addition from the African Development Bank, and he emphasized the need for bold partnerships to target Africa's food insecurity. And you just talked about, the optimism, if all the plan works, and everything goes according to plan, we could boost our production by 60%.
Okay.
But we have to also be realistic,
of course.
And look at all the possible roadblocks on the way. So in terms of ease of doing business and bolder partnerships, what are some issues that also needs to be critically looked at in terms of ease of doing business to ensure that those partnerships yield the results that we hope for, in this case, 60%?
Okay. So, if I would answer that very straight, one of the challenges that affects what Dr. Addition has pointed out is the lack of backing for private sector investors, private sector stakeholders. They do not have backing from their governments. They do not have backing. They do not have adequate backing. And that's why, the World Bank introducing the likes of IFC and, IBRD. These are organizations that can help collaboration between the government and the private sector. The private sector has a lot of resources. They have ways of mobilizing solutions. They have ways of, creating support that can enhance the progress of agriculture, but they do not have the adequate backing, right? And, that also takes us back to what I mentioned about, their fear of getting into this thing head on, right? So, if we're able to create a sustainable system that encourages the public and private partnership sector, that can improve agricultural development in Nigeria and across Africa.
Yeah.
I think we can also pay attention to intra-African trades, right? I don't think that's a major force in Africa as we speak. We need to improve intra-African trade such that African countries can easily collaborate on agricultural projects. Across different regions in Africa.
Yeah.
So yes, I think those are.
Right. Well, Samuel, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. Samuel is the commercial and export manager at ThriveAgric, Samuel Fadunsin, and he joined us today to talk about the World Bank and the IMF annual meetings in regards to their theme for this year, which is all about boosting agriculture. Once again, many thanks.
Thank you very much for having me.